There's a saying by Carl Jung that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will keep directing your life, and you would call it fate. Recently, I made a startling observation about a pattern I have, and it may apply to you, and it borders around, self abandonment and people pleasing, and just this identity that I realize I tend to form. And to illustrate this, I would like to walk you through a very short story. I began to notice that every time I had someone around, maybe my sister, a visitor, or a friend come around, I began to notice that I tend to let go of my, routine. Things that I would typically do, maybe take a walk in the morning, do my personal things, listen to the kind of podcasts I'll typically listen to, read the kind of books I'll typically read. Certain actions, there's a state of being that is unique to me, that I notice that once I have people around me, I tend to let go of that person that is me and become this person. It's almost as though I'm waiting to be at their beck and call, so I don't permit myself to go do the things I would normally do, because I'm waiting to take care, I'm waiting to be a caretaker, I'm waiting to make sure that everything is all right and that they are comfortable. But there's also this aspect of it that I think I can attribute to, feeling responsible for them and feeling like it's a bad move if I do anything focused on me. So I may not be doing anything directly for the person, but it's almost as if I'm on continuous guard, waiting for them to need me, and so I don't go on to do the things that I have to do in my life and things that I would normally be doing if they were not in my space. Now, the other way that I notice this tendency and this pattern is in relationships, and this may also relate to you, especially if you are a first daughter, if you are a woman, but most especially if you are a first daughter, this may relate to you. Now, I notice this not only with my siblings or with girls, my girlfriends that come around me. When I sat back to dig deeper into this tendency that I have, where I notice that I tend to let go of my chores or my routine or deprioritize them, right? Maybe I have a prayer session I typically do, or a ritual that I do. I deprioritize it just because somebody is around me. And so when I began to dig deeper into why do I do this, I seem to always do this when somebody is around. I noticed that I don't only do it to, people like my siblings or my friends who come around. Even in the relationships I've had in the past, I tend to have these tendencies where just because I am now in a relationship, I put my own personal life on hold. It's as though there's a part of me that cannot be myself and remain in that relationship. It feels like something has to go. And I find upon reflection that over and over again, I tend to deprioritize myself for the relationship. It almost feels as though sometimes it feels as if I'm waiting for the relationship to end so that I can move on with my life, because as long as that relationship is there, it's as if I will just keep going into this autopilot mode of being available for them, being there for them, and whether they say they need me or not is as though I'm making myself available so that they know that I can always be there. Reflecting upon this, it's as if my definition of love in my past relationships is tied to a lot of self-sacrifice, right? And when you go on like that, when you sacrifice yourself so much, you put your life on hold, you put your dreams on hold, even though nobody asks you, it's just maybe something from your childhood, from your upbringing, or maybe you grew up in an environment where it felt as though, you know, putting yourself first was selfish or a bad decision, and over time you learned that to survive and to stay safe, it's important to, you know, carry the other person's both visible and invisible burden of having them in your life. And because it just feels as though something has to drop, and because you feel that you've been shamed for any of the time, maybe in your upbringing, where, you know, you put yourself first and you were selfish and you were shamed for it, it has been wired into our brains that the noble thing to do is to sacrifice yourself and prioritize the other person. And so upon reflection, I realized that this is what I do in relationship. I feel in my past relationships, I'm not in any relationship right now, and just to make sure that we understand each other perfectly, this is all part of, you know, digging deep and reflecting on my patterns, you know, unearthing my patterns so that I don't repeat them. And I'm inviting you on this channel to join me to, you know, observe your pattern, to bring awareness to the things that we do that sabotage us and keep us stuck repeating the same cycles. Now, upon reflection, also another thing that I've realized is that somehow, even right from childhood, I've learned to read the room, right? Read the room and pay attention to everyone's emotions, everyone's, you know, state of mind and countenance. And it's almost as though when you, once somebody is in your presence, once somebody is in your presence, or in my presence in this case, it's as though there's an auto reaction of checking their countenance, checking their mood, reading their atmosphere and the emotion. Is it safe? Is everything all right? It happens so much on autopilot that, you know, you don't even realize that the reason why you are abandoning every other thing and deprioritizing the things that matter to you is because you are busy catering to the unspoken needs of another person, because you are busy scanning and waiting, making sure that you don't miss any signal of, are they uncomfortable? You don't want to be caught off guard, right? So you stay in that state where you're not really doing anything other than mentally and emotionally scanning that, oh, this person around you is okay. And it looks like doing nothing when you could have been doing something more productive and visible out there, but you are here doing this work that yields nothing, but is just confirming the need of your body, your nervous system, or the conditioning that you were brought up in, that you are safe. Like it needs to, your body needs to, or your nervous system needs to feel that, needs to be in control. So it keeps doing that, checking the atmosphere, checking the emotions, checking the state of mind and well-being of everybody, keeping you busy doing that, and meticulously doing it in such a way that it feels that if you step out, you're going to miss when they are uncomfortable or when they are not okay. And so it just keeps you there in perpetual vigilance, making sure that the other person is okay. Now, as noble as this is, as good as it is, it leads to a lot of things, right? It leads to self-abandonment. It leads to endless self-neglect. It can also make you to become very vigilant. You become hyper-vigilant and a people pleaser. Now, this people pleasing thing is very important to call out here, because you are scanning for said and unsaid needs or anticipated needs of the other person. You start going into fixer mode, right? You start fixing things for the person to make sure that they are all right. And in my inner work journey, I've come to realize that this, I must have formed this character as part of the cultural context and the familial framework in which I was brought up as a first daughter. You needed to be responsible for everybody. You know, your parents will come back and maybe see the room scattered and feel, or their feedback to you will be that you didn't pay attention to your siblings. You're supposed to be watching them, right? Or maybe somebody's temperature is rising or something is going wrong, and as a child you didn't pay attention to it, and you got this feedback or this communication that you are the adult here, you are the grown-up here, you are supposed to take care of these younger ones. And so on and on and on, these, responsibilities keep piling on you, and over time you've already formed this software, this operating system, where that is the only way you know how to function, so much so that you begin to operate in that autopilot mode without even questioning it. What I'm realizing from digging deep into these tendencies and this pattern is that this is an adaptation that I may have formed growing up, right? Asking myself questions, going as far into my memory to remember and unearth where all of this overgiving, people pleasing, self-sacrificing, self-abandoning must have come from. I see that perhaps it was needed at one point in time in my life where I was, tasked with being responsible for my younger ones, right? And I didn't realize when they had outgrown needing that kind of care, and I kept giving and offering it. It sort of has become my identity, right? Even though it's an invisible identity, but I sort of establish it more and more the more I do it, even though it's an invisible task that I do. Although it helped me survive in the past, helped me get, should I say, affection, helped me get the approval of parents and people to say, oh, you are a caring person, you are a good person, you put others first. That's outdated right now, because I no longer need to keep scanning, keep that radar on to make sure that everyone is all right. I no longer need to put my own needs aside and put every other person's own on a pedestal, whether physical needs, whether visible or invisible needs of the other person, based off of my training that has caused me to grow into this person, this adult that is always caretaking, that is always overgiving, that is always selfless, that is always, self-sacrificing, most times without even realizing that that is what I'm doing. Case in point, abandoning my routines, abandoning my rituals, abandoning my practices, just so that I am physically available to pay attention to the people around me. Now, this is something that I have observed in myself, like I said, but I've also tried to speak to a few people to know if this is something that they have experienced, and the people I've spoken to, this resonates with them, and that's why I've decided to come talk about it here, so that if you are in that position, you awaken and bring awareness to this tendency of self-abandoning, self-sacrificing, overgiving, and self-neglect perhaps that you may have, without even knowing that you have that tendency. And I feel this would resonate more with people who are firstborn daughters, or people who were raised with the belief that the ultimate thing to do was always to self-sacrifice and do for the other person and step down your own needs and wants. So As I conclude, I would like to leave you with this question to reflect on and to hold on to if you ever find yourself in such situations where you are deprioritizing yourself, especially when no one asks you to, especially when it's an old and outdated, habit or need. And the question is, in what way are you deprioritizing yourself in this moment? In what ways are you abandoning yourself in this moment? Maybe not in this moment, maybe in your life. The second question I would like you to reflect on is this. When someone enters your life, whether physically or emotionally, do you notice yourself shrinking? What parts of you, learned to step aside? And have you investigated why those parts of you learned to do that? And is it still necessary to keep doing that as of this present moment? I'll leave you with this quote from Eleanor Brown, and maybe I'm paraphrasing, and essentially what she was saying is that you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? You can't pour from an empty cup, but you need to also believe that your cup also deserves to be filled. And you are responsible for starting to fill your own cup before anyone out there adds to it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I'll see you in my next one. Bye-bye.